أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك، وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة، وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنقمة، وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومساءلتك، فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي، وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي، وأقل يا غفور عثرتي، فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها، وهم من قد كشفتها، وعثرة قد أقلتها، ورحمة قد نشرتها، وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، ولم يكن له شريك في الملك، ولم يكن له ولي من الذل، وكبره تكبيرا. الله أكبر.
جزاكم الله. والحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله فاشي في الخلق أمره، وحمده الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يده الذي لا تنقص خزائنه ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما، إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير مع حاجة بي إليه عظيما، وغناك عنه قديم، وهو عندي كثير، وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي، وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي، وصفحك عن ظلمي، وسترك على قبيح عملي، وحلمك عن كثير جرمي، عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك، الذي رزقتني من رحمتك، وأريتني من قدرتك، وعرفتني من إجابتك، فصرت أدعوك آمنا، وأسألك مستأنسا لا خائفا ولا وجلا، مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك. فإن أبطأ عني أتبت بجهلي عليك، ولعل الذي أبطأ عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور. فلم أر مولا كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي، يا ربي إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك كأن لي التطول عليك فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي وتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالك الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته والحمد لله على طول عناته في غضبه وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام الذي بعد فلا يراه وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله ولا شبيه يشاكله ولا ظهير يعازده قهر بعزته الأعزاء وتوازع لعظمته العظمى فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أنادي ويستر علي كل عورة وآناسه ويعظم نعمة علي فلا أجازي فكم من موهبة هنيئة قد أعطاني وعزيمة مخوفة قد كفاني وبهجة مونكة قد أراني فأثني عليه حامدا واذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يحتك حجابه ولا يغلق بابه ولا يرد سائله ولا يخيب عامله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاسم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الحاربين نكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موذي حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها وترجف الأرض وأمارها وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق ويرزق ولا يرزق ويطعم ولا يطعم ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على عهد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم صل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين، عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على صديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. وصل على سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيد شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي، حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر وحفه بملائكتك المقربين وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك، استخلف في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله، مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له، أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به، وانصره وانتصر به، وانصره نصرا عزيزا، وافتح له فتحا يسيرا، واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله، وتذل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملنا، وما كسرنا عنه فبلغنا. اللهم المم به شعثنا، واشأب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتكنا، وكثر به كلتنا، وعزز به ذلتنا، واغن به عائلنا، واجزي به عن مجرمنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به أسرنا، وبيز به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وانجح به طلبتنا، وانجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، وأعتنا به سؤلنا، وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، وأعتنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوصى المعطين. اشفي به صدورنا، وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق. آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله، وغيبة ولينا، وكثرة عدونا، وقلة عددنا، وشدة الفتن بنا وتظاهر الزمان علينا فصل على محمد وآله وإن على ذلك بفتح منك تؤجله وبضر تكشفه ونصر تؤزه وسلطان حق تظهره ورحمة منك تجللناها وعافية منك تلبسناها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. رحم الله من قرأ سورة مبارك الفاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before I begin today, we have been requested for dua for an elderly member of our community who is ill, Brother Ansar Zaidi. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him shifa and siha and afiyah and recovery for his health. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma shfi kulla mareed. May Allah grant good health and recovery to all members of our community who are ill. Today, I would like to briefly look at one of the most beautiful parts of our Islamic literary heritage, and within Nahjul Balagha, which is the path of eloquence, the peak of eloquence even in Nahjul Balagha is a very famous letter of Imam Ali addressed to Malik al-Ashtar, the companion of Imam Ali, whom he appointed as the governor of Egypt. We'll just take a brief look. Many of you may have read it in translation, but this is a letter that it is worth looking at frequently. Try it, and if you read it even every month, you won't feel like it's stale or it is old. It has that much wisdom which is packed into very few words. Although it is a lengthy letter, but there is so much that is in it that you won't find that you have fully understood it, even if you read it many times. Now, before we take a look at some of the sections of this very important letter, remember that Egypt was newly entered into the Islamic world. It had only entered into the Islamic world in the time of Uthman. And Egypt was a majority Christian province, and it was a province that had a long history of kings and pharaohs, and it was the wealthiest or one of the wealthiest provinces of the Muslim world. It was a source of some industry, but a big source of agriculture and wheat, and the port of Alexandria, that was a major point of trade in the ancient world in the entire Mediterranean. So it was a very important place in terms of its population, in terms of its demographics, in terms of its economy, in terms of its strategic and its geographic location. So in all aspects, Egypt was very important. And Malik al-Ashtar, of course, was the right-hand man of Imam Ali, so one of his most trusted companions. Imam Ali had other companions that he trusted, but some of them, Imam Ali, he trusted them for their religious and their spiritual qualities, but they didn't necessarily have the same level of administrative ability or military ability. Then there were some people that Imam Ali, he utilized them because they had the ability to be a good administrator, but they didn't have that religious dedication. So Imam Ali, he appointed Abdullah ibn Abbas, for example. Abdullah ibn Abbas was a scholar, and he was an administrator. But he sometimes had certain places where he wasn't able to fully understand the wisdom of Imam Ali to the extent that Imam Ali would have expected. You have people like Ziyad ibn Abi. Ziyad ibn Abi, the father of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, he was appointed as a governor by, by Imam Ali. And he was a very strong administrator, but although in the time of Imam Ali, he did not go beyond the commands that Imam Ali had given him, but he didn't have that spirit of piety. So Malik al-Ashtar was unique. He was both in terms of his piety at the highest level of trust, and in terms of his administrative ability at the highest level of competence, and he was courageous in battle. Normally those three different attributes, they don't come together. Pious in the masjid, competent in the administration, courageous on the battlefield. That was Malik al-Ashtar. So Egypt, importance is well known. Malik al-Ashtar, his significance is well known. And that is why, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And that is why we have a very comprehensive letter that Imam Ali has given. So this is letter number 53 in Nahj al-Balagha. And because we will not be able to get through much, I would encourage you to read through it, and don't take it in one day, but read through it gradually. Give yourself 3 or 4 days and read a little bit and contemplate as you read. Letter number 53 of Nahj al-Balagha. هذا ما أمر به عبد الله علي أمير المؤمنين مالك بن الحارث الأشتر في عهده إليه حين والله مصر. This is the covenant of Imam Ali to Malik ibn al-Harith al-Ashtar. أمره بتقوى الله وإيثار طاعته واتباع ما أمر به في كتابه. The first thing that Imam Ali is telling his administrator is that you need to have piety. The most important ingredient for success as a Muslim, even in an administrative post, is piety. Because we're not just trying to maximize profit. As a Muslim, no matter what you might be doing, your faith should be present in your work. Now, you might work for a corporation, and a corporation may feel that the most important thing is to maximize shareholder value and not to be a good corporate citizen. Especially if you look at the last generation, that's a change that has taken place within the corporate world. The old model of the corporations that took care of their town, Kodak or Hershey's or Ford in a previous time, that is no longer what describes the corporate world. But if you are a Muslim, even if you are working for that corporation, then you are a Muslim. Or if you work in politics, for many politicians, getting elected or getting re-elected or getting elected to higher office is the highest priority. But if you are a Muslim working in politics, then that is not your highest priority, because you have to operate in every area of life according to your values. So maximize shareholder value, otherwise you'll get fired. And work for your re-election, otherwise you won't be able to accomplish anything. But your highest priority should be to use that opportunity to make the world a better place, to serve humanity, as you are also taking care of your other obligations. So Imam Ali, he says, أَمَرَهُ بِالتَّقْوَى اللَّهِ وَإِيثَارِ طَاعَتِهِ. The priority is piety, and then give preference to obedience to Allah. Then Imam Ali, he says that أَمَرَهُ أَن يَكْسِرَ نَفْسَهُ مِنَ الشَّهَوَاتِ وَيَزَعَهَا عِنْدَ الْجَمَاحَاتِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that, or Imam Ali, he says that I command Malik to break your own soul when you have desires. This is something that applies to any time we are in a position of power. Doesn't have to be the highest political office in the land, but even if I supervise a number of employees, even if I am the head of a household, even if the teacher leaves and says that I am going to watch over my fellow students until the teacher comes back. I'm just kind of the class watcher for a temporary period. Anytime I have a position of authority, there is always a certain amount of temptation that comes with that position of power. And the solution, Imam Ali says, is أَن يَكْسِرَ نَفْسَهُ مِنَ الشَّهَوَاتِ. You have to cut down your soul, and you have to, it's like a weed that grows when there is rain and there is sun. So you need to trim it and cut it down, otherwise left untended it will grow without any kind of restriction. فَإِنَّ النَّفْسَ أَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ اللَّهُ. Everyone's soul will constantly command them to do evil, except if God shows you mercy. Now, Imam Ali is saying this to Malik al-Ashtar. Malik al-Ashtar, who is somebody that was so pious that he was at the forefront of the battle of Siffin, willing to get himself killed. So Malik is not somebody that is tempted by this world, but power brings temptation, and that is unavoidable. Salawatullah Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Then Imam Ali says that always remember that you are in the face of history. You might think that what we do is just for us, but everything that we do sets an example for society. One thing that we have in our communities is that we think that we have the right to express our opinion. Remember, every comment you make is going to create or feed into, worsen or improve a culture. It might be in my family that I just make an offhanded remark, so-and-so thinks that they're better than everybody. And then that might create a little bit of animosity, or it might move people's hearts further apart. Or a word of kindness or praise that, mashallah, you did a wonderful thing. And that might bring people's hearts together. When we have in our families or in our communities, sometimes there is a community effort. Maybe somebody, they wanted to do something to serve the community. It was their first effort. There were some weaknesses. So now I come and I say, you know, this wasn't done well. And it discourages that person who volunteered. Or it discourages that team from going forward. Or I give a positive word and it encourages them. So be very careful that what we say and what we express, we first think about, why do I want to express my opinion? And what effect is it going to have? Criticism is good. It's not to say never criticize, because without criticism, people will not be able to improve. But the way that I express the criticism shouldn't be so I feel superior. It shouldn't be to put another person in their place. I should choose what I criticize and how I say it so that it will have the greatest constructive effect in that environment that I am speaking in. That's not easy to do. I'm a member of several of our WhatsApp groups in our community, casual member, but I can sometimes see that people's comments are often just something that they must have read something and they make a comment. But we need to develop that habit, whether it's online, or it's in person, or it's in our gatherings in family or with friends. Speak, but speak something that encourages good practices in our community, that discourages bad practices in our community. Don't gossip, don't comment casually, and don't settle scores. And so right after remembering taqwa, Imam Ali, he says to Malik that you are going to Egypt. Remember, you are in the full view of history. ثم اعلم يا مالك أني قد وجهتك إلى بلاد قد جرت عليها دول قبلك. I'm sending you to a country, they had other governments before you. You're not the first, it's new to the Islamic world. It's been less than a decade or so since the Muslims have now established their authority in Egypt, less than 2 decades before it was conquered. So for us, it's very new. You know how sometimes people think history starts when they start paying attention. That's not how it is. There were governments before you. وَأَنَّ النَّاسَ يَنْظُرُونَ مِنْ أُمُورِكَ فِي مِثْلِ مَا كُنْتَ تَنْظُرُ فِيهِ مِنْ أُمُورِ الْوُلَاةِ قَبْلَكَ. And people are going to look at you just as you looked at the people before you. Now, who was Malik? Malik was one of those people who was the leaders of the principled opposition to Uthman ibn Affan from among the people of Kufa. Different cities, when their governors sent by Uthman started to oppress them, they objected. Some of the cities, they kind of rose up sort of in a rebellion that wasn't disciplined. Egypt was one of those places because it was new, and so their rebellion was not Islamically informed. Some of the cities, they had reasonable people, learned in Islam, disciplined and responsible, and so their objection to Uthman also was not a chaotic rebellion, but it was a responsible opposition. So that was the situation in Kufa, and Malik was one of those people that objected to what was going on. Now Imam Ali is telling Malik, you are the government. The same way that you objected to what was being done in your city, in Kufa, and in the Muslim world before you, people are going to look at you the same way. So bear that in mind. Normally, in our lives, everything is bad until it's in my control. And then there is a justification or an excuse. Yes, we were a little bit late, but that's okay. Yes, we didn't do one thing properly, but that's okay. But if it's under your control, then I can give you a laundry list of what you did wrong. So Imam Ali says, remember that the tables turn. They have turned once, and they can turn again. And then very interestingly, this is one of those tidbits of wisdom of Imam Ali, in a sentence that maybe some of us wouldn't expect from Imam Ali. وَإِنَّمَا يُسْتَدَلُّ عَلَى الصَّالِحِينَ بِمَا يُجْرِ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ عَلَى أَلْسُنِ عِبَادِهِ. The only way you can find out who is salih and who is a good person is through the good words that Allah puts in the mouths of people. That's how I find out that somebody is salih. Now, many of us, we might think that Imam Ali, he doesn't care what people say. He just cares about the truth. And that's true. But then the issue is that if I want truth to spread in society, it's not just what is right. It's also how is what is right recognized and spoken about in society. And so Imam Ali is speaking here to Malik not about find out what is right and what is wrong. That doesn't depend on what people say. Imam Ali is saying to be an effective governor, you have to pay attention to what people are saying. And you have to have a public relations department to make sure that the word on the street is not propaganda, which is going to make it difficult for people to find you or find out what your values and what your personality or what your priorities are. إِنَّمَا يُسْتَدَلُّ عَلَى الصَّالِحِينَ. The only way you can find out who is salih is بِمَا يُجْرِ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ عَلَىٰ أَلْسُنِ عِبَادِهِ, is through what people say. So Imam Ali says, be concerned with public relations, but is it your public relations department that's going to give you a good name? بِمَا يُجْرِ اللَّهُ عَلَىٰ لِسَانِ عِبَادِهِ. Allah is the one who's going to keep your reputation. Don't ignore it. But then don't think that you have to hire a public relations firm and you have to respond to every negative review or negative comment because you have to protect your own reputation. Who is going to do it? Allah. So trust that do the right thing, be concerned about maintaining your honor and your dignity, and then trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will preserve your reputation. So several messages all in one. Number one, be concerned about your reputation. Be concerned about public relations. But remember that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who in the end, He is mu'izz and He is mudhill. So don't worry about doing it on human terms. And another lesson we learn from this sentence is that we need to be among those people who speak of what is good. So many of us, we see so many good things and then we just file it away. If you see something good, make it a point to call the person who did the good thing and pray for them. And tell them that you admire them and you appreciate them. And tell others about it so that they can also find out and they can be encouraged. How many times, and you are all familiar with this, do we find that there is something very valuable or very beneficial going on in society and people say, I didn't know about this? Well, one of the ways that people will find out is if you tell them and if I tell them. So just one sentence of Imam Ali, but if we were to ponder it, we could speak about it for a long time. Then the Imam says, and I'm skipping a few sentences, وَشُحَّ بِنَفْسِكَ عَمَّا لَا يَحِلُّ لَكَ. Be stingy with yourself with respect to things that are haram. Now, normally the Quran only criticizes stinginess. وَمَنْ يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Those people whom Allah has kept away from stinginess, they will be the ones to achieve salvation. But there is one place that Allah says stinginess is good. And that is found in this statement of Imam Ali, وَالشُّحَّ بِنَفْسِكَ عَمَّا لَا يَحِلُّ لَكَ. Be a little stingy with your soul. What is your soul? Your time, your energy, your resources, they're all finite. So don't just give yourself away, but utilize your time and your energy and be stingy. Because if you spend it in what is haram, then you will not have that time, you will not have that energy to spend it in what is worthwhile and what is halal. So be stingy, but with regard to that finite resource of your soul, your time, your energy that Allah has given you. Not with your wealth, because your wealth comes and goes. What you count on saving might not be there for you, it might be decimated. And what you never expected, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give it. That's not a good stinginess. But with your soul, that is a good stinginess. فَإِنَّ الشُّحَّ بِالنَّفْسِ. Now what does it mean to be stingy? Don't get the wrong idea. The Imam says, الْإِنصَافُ مِنْهَا فِيمَا أَحَبَّتْ أَوْ كَرِهَتْ. Be fair. Whether your soul is attracted to something or whether it is not attracted to something, be fair in deciding whether to do it or not. There are some things that I don't like, but they are important for me. And there are some things that I very much like, but they are damaging for me. So bear that in mind when making decisions. Then another one of the beautiful expressions of Imam Ali, وَأَشْعِرْ قَلْبَكَ الرَّحْمَةَ لِلرَّعِيَّ وَالْمَحَبَّةَ لَهُمْ. Create and cultivate in your heart a love for the common people and kindness to the common people. Normally, and this is true in our immigrant Muslim community as well, many of the members of our community, alhamdulillah, they came with an education, they came and they were able to achieve material success, and so sometimes our thinking and our priorities, they have unexamined elements of classism, elitism, racism, ethnocentrism within ourselves. That's not our topic. I'm just pointing it out that we have to remember that if I was born into privilege, and sometimes I may not feel privileged because I don't have other forms of privilege, but I do have some. Maybe a two-parent household. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but that is a privilege, especially in today's society. And so many other forms. So there is a tendency sometimes to become a little bit elitist, or sometimes to look with disdain or condescension on the common people. Imam Ali says to Malik that, remember, أشعر قلبك الرحمة للرعية والمحبة لهم واللطف بهم. Cultivate in your heart a love for the ra'iyah, the common people, for everyone. And then this is where Imam Ali, he has that famous sentence that you are all familiar with, فَإِنَّهُمْ صِنْفَانِ إِمَّا أَخٌ لَكَ فِي الدِّينِ وَإِمَّا نَظِيرٌ لَكَ فِي الْخَلْقِ. People are either your brothers in religion, or they are your peers in God's creation, even if they're not Muslim. This is the wisdom of Imam Ali and the nature of his teaching. And then Imam Ali says, يَفْرُطُ مِنْهُمُ الزَّلَلِ وَتَعْرِضُ لَهُمُ الْعِلَلِ. They're going to make mistakes. Some people have a temper. Some people, they are going to have one fault or another. Expect those faults and don't become condescending or dismissive of people because of their faults. This is humanity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. And then I want to just skip to one final thing to mention. This is another example of how Imam Ali, he reminds us of certain things that we may not normally be conscious or we may not remember. Imam Ali, he says that وَلْيَكُنْ أَحَبُّ الْأُمُورِ إِلَيْكَ أَوْسَطَهَا فِي الْحَقِّ وَأَعَمَّهَا فِي الْعَدْلِ وَأَجْمَعَهَا لِرِضَى الرَّعِيَّةِ فَإِنَّ سُخْطَ الْعَامَّ يُجْحِفُ بِرِضَى الْخَاصَّةِ وَإِنَّ سُخْطَ الْخَاصَّةِ يُغْتَفَرْ مَعَ رِضَى الْعَامَّةِ. This is not Machiavellian politics, but this is Alawi thought and politics. The Imam says, let the most important and the most beloved thing to you be that justice which is most moderate and which is most universal. The principle that is the most universal. And that which can make the widest number of people happy. أَجْمَعَهَا لِرِضَى الرَّعِيَّةِ. Then the Imam says that if the elite are angry with you, that's forgiven. If the common people are okay. And if the common people are angry, then it doesn't benefit you whether the elite are satisfied or not, because when the common people complain, eventually the elite are also going to begin to complain. It's a very profound statement, and Imam Ali explains what he means. He says that when those elite people, when you seek their pleasure, they're never going to thank you. You give them one incentive after another, and they will always feel, because that's what made them the elite in their society. They felt better than other people. They were used to first-class accommodations. They were used to everybody standing up for them. So they're never going to show gratitude in good times, and then in bad times, they'll get the first ticket and they'll flee. They're not going to be there to stand with you through thick and thin. Yes, they may seem to be influential, but those are not the ones that are going to build a society. So we are out of time, but in this letter, Imam Ali, he doesn't just give advice to his governor about how to govern Egypt. He gives advice to every human being who wants to build an Islamic society, an Alawi society. If you are a parent, this advice is advice on parenting. If you are a volunteer in the community, this is advice on community building. If you have any kind of social role or professional role where you interact or where you oversee other people, this letter of Imam Ali tells you how to do so. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to learn from the lessons of Imam Ali alayhi salam and build our families and our communities in accordance with his teachings. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It is now time for adhan, so we'll make our way to the other hall for prayer.